The New York Giants defeat the Houston Texans 24-16 to move to 7-2 on the season. Instant analysis coming right up. And what's next? Stay tuned. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Tommy's Takes. I'm your host, Tommy G. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. Please like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Check me out on Twitter, TommyG105. Please do check out the Giants Country team. Unbelievable content coming out. Articles, interviews, you name it. As the season starts heating up here in the second half, so do we. Everybody that's subscribed already and showed love and support, I really can't thank you enough from the bottom of my heart. It means the world to me. Keep showing support. Keep showing love. This is only going to get better. And just like the Giants, we're going to keep rolling. And that's what they did Sunday. Giants go to 7-2 after a 24-16 victory over the Texans at MetLife. Wasn't as much of a nail-biter as some of the other games have been, but still New York's 8th game decided by one score or less. Really unbelievable when you think about it. Really playing the tightrope walking act. But hey, it's worked for this team. And, it didn't look like it was going to be that way as the Giants came out. First drive of the game, 68-yard TD drive, highlighted by a 36-yard catch by Darius Slayton. We'll have more Slayton coming up. He really had a great afternoon. Very happy for Darius Slayton. Many, like myself, didn't think he would even make the team coming into the season. But not only did he, even after the pay cut, he was humble, he was professional about it, and he's starting to see some of the fruits bear from his labor. Had a really great afternoon. So Giants got a 9-yard score to Cager. Unfortunately, the offense would bog down the rest of the first half. The defense started the game on fire. 3 consecutive 3-and-outs. Even missing their captain, Xavier McKinney, didn't really matter. Texans really didn't get the offense going until late in the game. But the D really started out on fire. The Ball and Kafka had a very clear game plan. Run. Everybody knows the Texans were one of the worst rush defenses in, I believe it was the last 5 seasons, allowing over 180 yards per game. And the Giants with arguably the best running back in football. That was an equation that wasn't too hard to figure out. Giants ran the ball 47 times and only threw the ball 17 times. And, it would have worked much better if the Giants didn't shoot themselves in the foot on offense. In the first half, you had the false start on Jack Anderson. Giants line up on 4th and 1. It's already a solid drive. You're in Houston territory. 4th and 1. You're going to go for it. I'm not sure if it was going to be a quarterback sneak or run up the middle. They did have a heavy jumbo set. It was almost all offensive linemen. Unfortunately, Jack Anderson was one of them, and he jumped off sides. And the Giants ended up punting. That was a huge miss. And Brian DeBall was not happy about that. He laid into Anderson on the sidelines. And shout out to Coach Dable because he's not scared to show his emotions. You've seen it week 1 with Daniel Jones when he threw the ill-advised interception in the end zone versus Tennessee. And you've seen it, with Jack Anderson. That was a brutal penalty. And listen, penalties at any point in the game are bad. But when you have a full start on a 4th and 1, that's awful. And, you kind of feel for the guy a little bit. Yeah, he's a professional, makes a ton of money, but he really got a scathing. So that set the Giants back. And they ended up punting it and not score at all. And the rest of the half, really wasn't much going on. Giants led 7-3 at the half. Finished the half with 182 total yards to the Texans' 86 yards, but only 7 points to show for it. And, when people talk about the Giants offense is conservative, because of Daniel Jones, they're worried he's going to make mistakes. Daniel Jones wasn't the problem yesterday. Daniel Jones had a terrific afternoon, in my opinion. 197 yards passing, 2 passing touchdowns, 153 rating. Daniel Jones did what he could, especially in that first half. But in the second half, he came, alive much more. Giants came out blazing to start the third quarter. It was when you really think about it, this Giants team has done a remarkable job of adjusting. They struggle to come out sometimes to start games, but at the start of halves, they've really started to do a good job. And Daniel Jones would notch his second touchdown pass on that drive. 54-yard pass to Darius Slayton. Awesome play by Jones and Slayton. Jones is getting ready to get demolished, has two defenders bearing down on him. On his back foot, delivers an accurate throw to Slayton, and Slayton just did what he had to do. He slipped the tackle of rookie Julian Petrie and jetted up the left sidelines. That put the Giants up 14-3, and looked like they were rolling. Giants were up 14-3, and when you think about it, there have been a couple times this season where the Giants have looked like their offense was ready to click. The offense looked like it was ready to take off, and it just never really happens. And it was similar in this game as well. The Texans came right back after that touchdown drive. They scored to make it 14-10. Mills to Nico Collins touchdown. Giants lead was 14-10 at that point, and this is when you start to think about it, right? When you start to think about the mistakes and shooting yourself in the foot and the 4 penalties the Giants had in the first half, not scoring when he needed to. But the Giants, even down 14-10, had a little bit of a secret weapon that's not so secret. Saquon Barkley. I mean, what more can you say about number 26 for the New York Giants? He has been phenomenal, and there was no difference yesterday. Saquon really, really carried this team. And it was tough yards, wasn't easy. He had a couple of medium runs, but I mean, think about it. When you look at Saquon's numbers for the day, 35 carries, 152 yards, a touchdown, 4.3 yards per carry. He got the workhorse yards. He got the yards up the middle. And you question sometimes where this team would be without Saquon Barkley, because he was really the bell cow, and he's been the bell cow every game. He's been Daniel Jones' best friend on the field. He's opened things up, and he opened things up for the Giants versus the Texans. Texans had no answer for him, and the thing that I loved about this game was there's been a couple of games this season where the run didn't work in the first half, and the coaching staff just kept pushing and pushing. And this game, they took it up to the nth degree. They pounded the run with Saquon Barkley, and it worked because even after the Giants' lead was cut 14-10, they come right back and they get another touchdown, 21-10. The defense would step up the rest of the way. Defense, they did give up some drives in the second half, but didn't give up touchdowns, only field goals, 2 critical turnovers. Rookie Dane Belton, shout out to him. He had a great game. He had an interception off Mills. You also had a fumble that Leonard Williams forced on Damian Pierce, which was huge. Teams traded field goals, but once Graham Gano hit that 49-yarder with about 150 left, the game was essentially over. So that was basically encapsulation of what happened in the game. Giants in the first half started on fire, shot themselves in the foot with penalties. Texans couldn't do much in the first half on offense. Giants defense dominated. And in the second half, both teams' offenses came alive. Difference was Giants scored touchdowns, Texans scored field goals, and shout out again to Wink Martindale and his defense. Awesome job shutting down the Texans, passing attack. They did get a big run. They had a 40-plus yard run with Damian Pierce, but the fourth-round rookie out of Florida has had a phenomenal season. And you got to be happy where you're at if you're Brian Daboll, Mike Kafka. It wasn't the prettiest win. Some people out there wanted the Giants to win by more than a score, but there was never a point in this game watching it where I thought the Giants would lose. Just my personal opinion. I thought they had command. I thought whenever they needed to score, they did. Whenever the Texans struck, the Giants came right back and struck. So this was really one of those mature wins for the Giants. Also was probably one of the first games, if not the first game of the season, where the Giants were the hunted. They were the better team. They had the much better record. And that's a role that the Giants are going to have to get used to as they go forward here, as they play the Lions on Sunday. Because after the Lions game, they start a really tough stretch, the Giants. And teams are not going to be fooled anymore. They know what the Giants could do. They know what they could bring. And, again, it starts with Saquon Barkley and this offensive line. I wanted to talk about that for a second as the Giants go to 7-2. Big loss by the Cowboys to the Packers. That actually pushes the Giants into second place in the NFC East. And this is the Giants' best start since 2008. So, really remarkable, again, what this coaching staff has done with the injuries, with lack of playmakers on the defensive side of the ball, with lack of playmakers at the wide receiver position, losing Daniel Bellinger, losing Evan Neal. So essentially you go into that game yesterday versus Houston, and this is kind of towards people that say the Giants should have won by more, too conservative. Do I think that they could have thrown the ball more? Yes. Jones was having a good afternoon. He was averaging, I believe, his high for yards per attempt in the game. But at the end of the day, you go into this game, you're missing your starting right tackle in Evan Neal. You're missing your starting left guard in Ben Bredesen. You're missing your starting tight end in Daniel Bellinger. You're still missing receivers. Shepard's out for the year. Tony shipped off. You got guys in there that are coming in and out. Sills didn't play this game, wasn't active. Hodgins played in the game, which was awesome. Had a couple of nice plays, but remarkable. And it all goes to coaching. All goes to Daniel Jones playing clean, mistake-free football. Saquon Barkley, just pushing forward in his comeback player of the year bid. He has been so phenomenal this season. And, there was talks before the game about the team kind of shelving contract talks with Barkley, which is fine. I don't think that's anything either way. I think that will be a tough negotiation just because the season he's having, also represented by Rock Nation, who notorious for some of their tougher negotiations out there. But this is the thing, I personally have never been a fan of big running back contracts. They never seem to really fully benefit the team that signs the player. But to me, Barkley's much more than just a great running back. He's a captain. He's the face of this franchise right now. Great leader, great teammate. He's fought through a ton of adversity since he's been with the Giants. He's done everything the team has asked of him, and I think he should be rewarded. I do think there's a way that they can make that work while still improving this roster. So I think that's going to get done. Either way, contract talks shells. He comes out, 35 carries, 152 yards, touchdown, hard running all afternoon. And to me, he deserves it. He deserves a contract. I don't know what that contract looks like. I don't know if they're not able to reach a deal, do they tag him? But, it's very hard to see this team going forward continuing their rebuild without their best player, the face of their franchise. So I think Barkley gets another go round with the New York Giants. And shout out again to him, single-handedly really taking it to this Texans team. Now we'll go to Daniel Jones. I thought Daniel Jones had a really good afternoon. Did miss a couple throws. Missed the first pass attempt to Golladay. Looks like it was just beyond Galladay's reach. Had a really tough miss to Darius Slayton heading towards the right hashtag. Slayton was open, and Jones threw it behind him. Other than that, Jones was 13 of 17, 197 yards, 2 touchdowns in the air. I'm kind of hearing the talk out there about how the coaching staff is being conservative because they don't want him to make mistakes. And to me, that makes absolutely no sense because this is the first year of the coaching staff and the new regime, new GM. Not a lot of pressure to win this year. So not a lot of pressure to put Jones out there and say, hey, don't make mistakes. Be careful. We need to win this game. It's a one-score game. Game is on the line. I would think adversely, coaching staff would want him to air it out and see what they have in him. Or if they're not a fan of Jones, hey, look, Giants fans, this is the quarterback. Is this who you want to sign? The reason they're being conservative is because they have no skill position players at receiver other than Darius Slayton. Their starting tight end, who is a rookie, was out. Their starting right tackle, who is a rookie, was out. It's hard to air the ball out 30, 40 times a game when you don't have the horses for the race. So to say that the team doesn't, air it out or is conservative because they're scared Jones is going to make mistakes, guy hasn't had an interception in 6 games. And if you want to discount the one he threw versus Dallas, where Sills just inexplicably falls down and the ball's picked, hasn't had a pick in 8 games. So I think that's a crazy narrative. I think that's a narrative really that's kind of transformed here as the old narrative of Jones being bad, turning the ball over, he can't win games, has fell to the wayside. So I think Jones had a terrific day. Shout out to him. Again, another turnover-free game. And that's how you win games in the National Football League. You run the football, you execute when it's time to pass, you don't turn the ball over, and you force the other team to beat you. You don't beat yourself. The reason the Giants lost in Seattle was because they beat themselves, and it wasn't the quarterback. So the brand of football that's being played by the Giants right now is the correct brand. And that's why it's so impressive what Brian Daboll, Mike Kafka, and Wink Martindale have done with this team, because it's the right game plan week in, week out. Does it need to be tweaked? Sure. Could you have thrown it another 6-7 times yesterday? Sure. But there's a learning curve. Both Mike Kafka, Brian Daboll are first-time coaches at their specific positions. Brian Daboll is a first-time head coach. Kafka's a first-time offensive coordinator. There's going to be growing pains. There's going to be learning curves. They're finding their identity. They're finding their way. And they're having to do it every week, losing starters and losing players and losing their captain and Xavier McKinney. So I think Jones had a fine afternoon. I thought he played well. I think he continues to progress. He shows that he's tough. He can make any throw on the field. Needs to improve a little bit accuracy-wise, but quarterbacks are going to miss passes. You see the screenshots yesterday of him missing Golladay on the first pass attempt and then missing Slayton. You could watch any NFL game, and you could watch Josh Allen, and you could watch Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady. You could find passes missed in each one of those games. Granted, they've built up a lot more leverage, and they built up a lot more credit because of their great performances in their careers, but it happens, and he's human. So I thought he did fine. I want to go to Dexter Lawrence. My goodness. I mean, Giants picked up his fifth-year option for $11 million in the offseason, and that $11 million was straight robbery. Dexter Lawrence was the best player on the field yesterday for both teams, and it was by a wide margin. Absolutely disruptive. Wreaked havoc on that Texans offensive line. Let me read you some of these numbers yesterday for Dexter Lawrence. He had a sack, 5 tackles, 5 QB hits. 5 QB hits for a nose tackle. Tackle for a loss, even threw in a pass defense, just for good measure. And the Giants got one with Dexter Lawrence. I mean, my goodness. When you watch Dexter Lawrence play, not only is he unblockable, he's quick for his size. The way he can move laterally, the way he can get sideline to sideline, unbelievable. So not only do you have a player that combines strength, toughness, smarts, you have a player at I don't think I've ever seen anyone move that quick at that size. And that's a big reason of why he's dominating. He could beat you with the bull rush up the middle. He could beat you with a pass rush move. He's making tackles on opposite sides of where he's lining up. Unbelievable for Dexter Lawrence, for a player of that size to move like that. And he's earned himself some serious money this season. And, knock on wood, hopefully he continues that. But I mean, wow. It was like every time you looked up, Dexter Lawrence was making a play. Every time you checked and looked at the screen, the center was getting manhandled by Dexter Lawrence. And it's been all season. And, when you look at it, the Giants already have Leonard Williams on a big contract. Not sure how that's going to work because you're going to have to give Dexter Lawrence a huge contract. There's no way around it. He's playing like an all-pro. Not many players in the league are playing at his level. I mean, 342 pounds, 6'4", moves like a gazelle for someone of his size. Unbelievable. So he's going to have a massive payday coming up. I mean, if you look at his numbers for the season, 33 tackles, 17 assists, 5 sacks for a nose tackle. Unbelievable. Shout out to Dexter Lawrence. He's earned every single penny of that money that he's earned. And Giants are blessed to have him. Like I said, not sure how that's going to work with Leonard Williams. You also have Azeez Ojulari, Kayvon Thibodeau. Obviously, Kayvon's on his rookie deal. Azeez is on his second year. So Giants' defensive line shaping up to be one of the best in the league. And you've seen it yesterday. And really, Dexter Lawrence, I won't say single-handedly shut down their offense because they did get it going somewhat in the second half, and the Giants did have some other players that played well. Rookie Dane Belton had his first interception. I thought he played well in the first game of the absence of Xavier McKinney. Him playing well allows Julian Love to play McKinney's role a little bit, especially as the play caller in a sense back there. And he did everything he was asked of. Unfortunately, it wasn't all positive when it came to player progression, player development for the Giants yesterday. You did have Kenny Golladay. It was his first game back from injury. Giants are desperate for help at the wide receiver position, desperate for playmakers there. And it was just brutal. I'm going to be honest. The first pass to Golladay was tallied as a drop. I thought it could have been a better throw by Daniel Jones. I thought it was a little bit out of the reach. He did get his fingertips on it, but it was a tough catch. But the second throw to Kenny Golladay was just inexcusable. He breaks free over the middle. I'm not sure if it was a slant, a deeper slant drag. Breaks wide open over the middle. Cornerback is about 1.5 yards behind him. Never takes his eyes off the ball, and the ball just goes through the wickets. It almost was like he didn't want to catch the ball. And that was it. He was pulled from the game after that second drop. Coaching staff seen enough. And, where do you go from here when it comes to Golladay? Do you roll him out there next week? Do you start him? I don't know. But it almost looks like he doesn't want to be out there. And, he says all the right things in the press conferences for the most part. They asked him about the booing. He was booed after both drops. The first one, I don't think he should have been booed. The second one was brutal. And, he said, hey, the fans booing does nothing for me. It doesn't inspire me, doesn't get me going, doesn't get me angry. And maybe this guy needs a fire lit under him. But what is the fire? He's been benched. He's been hurt. He's been unproductive. And it's just a torturous situation for the Giants because the wide receiver position outside of linebacker is their worst position group. And you have this guy that you paid $72 million to. You have this guy that if you turn on his career highlights, you're like, that's what we need right there. That's what this team could use down the stretch as they head to the playoffs. But they're not going to have it because Kenny Golladay cannot bring it to this team. Struggles to get open. And when he does get open, drops the ball. And drops it badly. I mean, that was a bad drop. He was going to go for about 20, 25, 30 yards on that. So Giants have a decision to make with him. I don't think much help is coming unless they could swing Odell, which I know everyone would love Odell. I think that would be an awesome boost to the team, especially, if they could sign him down the stretch here with some tough games coming up. But really brutal for Golladay. And I was one of the people that said this, before the game. I feel good for him. He's been out for the last few weeks, saying all the right things in the press conferences. He's going to get the reps. Sills was inactive to start the game, so Galladay's going to get the reps. And one, just doesn't have chemistry with Jones. Two, really doesn't look athletic out there. Really doesn't look like he can get separation or he can get away from his guy. And I said this on the previous show, but he was a 50-50 catch type guy when he was at the height of his athletic ability, which means he wasn't a separation guy. So you fast forward 3 years later after a massive hip surgery, and that's tough, man. That's tough. And, if the Giants were in a better position at the wide receiver group and the contract wasn't so deplorable, I don't think he'd be on this team anymore. And looks like he doesn't want to be on the team anymore. Looks like he just wants to slide off into the sunset and take his money and get going. And it's so unfortunate for the Giants because they need that. They need a receiver that can make plays now. They're doing great with the running attack. One of the top rushing teams in the league. Saquon Barkley is now the leading rusher in the NFL. Much deserved for Saquon Barkley. He deserves that. But at some point down the line here, when you get into some of these tougher games versus the Phillies, Dallas, Minnesota coming up, you're going to have to throw the ball, and you're going to have to try to throw the ball with some consistency. Obviously Slayton has done a great job. He's averaging 63 yards over the last 5 games, 11 yards higher than his rookie season, and a career high catch rate of almost 68%. So they have Slayton. Slayton has slowly developed into Jones' number one guy. You always have the issue of worrying about drops with Slayton, but looked great yesterday. Give him the benefit of the doubt, and he's going to be their main guy. Who steps up for number 2? Is it Hodgins? Does he step up? Is he able to make some plays? You also have, does Richie James come back in the fold? Didn't really see him yesterday. But all in all, got to be happy with where this Giants team is at. Play calling was a little bit strange yesterday. They came out fast-paced. First drive was quick, no huddle, great pace. Then they got away from it. Obviously, you can't use that the whole game. It's not how fast-paced, no huddle works, but would have liked to see them get back to it a little bit more. And then I wanted to touch on, GM Joe Schoen and the job he's done with this team and, the players he's brought on. Everyone knows the Giants have been destroyed with injuries, to put it lightly this season. But let's look at some of the players he's brought on and just kind of pick them up out of nowhere. You got Isaiah Hodgins, 2 catches, 41 yards yesterday. Lawrence Cager yesterday, a touchdown. Fabian Moreau has been very solid for the Giants. Had a rough afternoon yesterday. Got beat a couple times, had a penalty, but he's been really good for the Giants. Jalen Smith's the starting middle linebacker. Tyree Phillips is starting right tackle for now. Jason Pinnock had a sack yesterday, tackle for a loss. So Joe Schoen has done a phenomenal job of saying, hey, what do you need to replace this injured player? What fits the system, Brian? What could I get you? And he's picking up the right players. And this goes back to the coach and the GM being in unison. And this Giants team would not be where it's at if the head coach and the GM weren't in lockstep and weren't performing at a high level. You can confidently say now, as a Giants fan, the head coach is doing an awesome job, and the GM is doing an even better job getting the players for this team with little to no money at all. So, Giants go to 7-2. Next week they have Detroit coming up. Detroit is 3-6. Another favorable matchup for the Giants, and that's what's awesome about this Giants team. You don't worry about a letdown. If anything, you would have worried about a letdown versus the Texans. Texans are not a good football team. So this team is well prepared. They come out in the second half playing well. And looking down the road, they have 7 wins with Detroit coming up. Giants could possibly be making their move toward a playoff berth. And I think that would be the story of the NFL season, in which was, stage 0 of the rebuild, right? Basically at the bottom, we're just trying to see what we have in these players and what they could do. And, really, really unbelievable. So shout out to Joe Shane. Shout out to Brian Dable. Amazing job by both of them. And the Giants keep moving forward, and they're doing it playing an old school brand of ball. They're doing it running the football effectively. They pound teams. They're doing it by playing defense soundly, opportunistic. Again, another game where the defense comes alive in the second half, gets a couple turnovers, sways the momentum of the game. And that game could have been a lot different yesterday as the Texans offense started to heat up. But you had the Belton interception. You also had the Leo forced fumble on Pierce. And that's what this defense has been about. It's not the best defense in the world. They struggle against the run. But when they need a stop, they need that key stop, they need that key turnover, they got it. And would have Giants fans seen the last 5-6 years? How many games have come down to the last drive? Defense needs a stop. Here it is. The game's right in front of you to win it, and they just couldn't do it. And that's what's different about this defense. That's what's different about this team. And as the Giants head to play Detroit at MetLife, it's all sunshine and rainbows right now. And you're also starting to get some players back, right? You've seen Pert activated. He's back. You got Nick Gates back. It's really, it's a pleasure to see for the Giants, especially with the players that they've lost. And they're going to keep rolling. I think this Giants team has what it takes. I think it's a real winning football team. It's not some type of mirage. They've won on the road and won. They've beaten a couple teams that are over 500. They went to London and won. They've won close games. They've won games no one's expected them to win. They've played above expectations, but it's not a mirage. It's not a fraud. This team is the real deal. And I think as the season rolls along and they can get a little bit healthier, when they get Evan Neal back, they get Daniel Bellinger back, I think you're going to start to see this team play more open on offense. I think you're going to see them cut a little bit of the conservativeness out. I mean, listen, they're going to run the ball. The Giants are a running team. They have one of the best running backs, if not the best running back in the league, in Saquon Barkley. And that's who they are, and that's their identity. But you'll see the offense open up a little more. Defensively, you're going to see what you saw. The number one blitzing team in the NFL is the New York Giants. They bring exotic blitzes, creative blitzes. They had a safety sack yesterday by Pinnock, unblocked, came out of nowhere. Wink is doing a phenomenal job creating pressure. The front four is bringing pressure, especially up the middle. Like to see a little bit more pressure from the ends. Thibodeau has done a good job, but the pressure is coming up the middle. So the Giants' formula right now is run the ball on offense, hit the passes when we need them, and bend but don't break on defense with opportunistic turnovers. And it's working. Thank you for tuning in again. Please like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Tommy G105 over on Twitter if you want to check me out. Check out the Giants Country team. Again, thank you for the love. Thank you for the support. Much, much appreciated. And let's see where this Giants season goes. Peace.